Dr. Tomas Tylutki of AMTS, and I'm going to talk to you today about rumen bypass and what happens within the cow. And the best way I could think of doing this was to actually start with a cow. And we painted on the side of her basically where the rumen is and how big the rumen is. And if you look, it takes up most of her body cavity. It's basically a 150-liter drum inside of her. And in that drum is small particles of feed and billions of bacteria. Now, you all know when you check to see if a cow's eating well, if you feel here to see if the rumen's full and if you feel the rumen contractions, that's how far back it goes, folks. Everything she eats comes down her esophagus and into the rumen. And the bugs have the first chance at anything that she has in her diet. So they go through and they break down all the proteins, the fiber, the starches, grow bugs, produce VFAs, which is great, and anything that doesn't get broken down comes out of the rumen and through the reticulum. When we talk about proteins, that comes out of the reticulum is bypass proteins. And when we look at something like soybean meal, for every 100 grams of protein that she eats, 70 to 80 grams of that is going to be degraded in the rumen and turned into bugs. It's going to turn into ammonia, and that'll go into milk urea nitrogen, plasma urea nitrogen, and too much of that reduces reproductive performance. So what we want to do when we want to maximize performance of the cows and health of the cows is to have a mix of proteins that are degraded as well as supplying enough amino acids that escape the rumen to maximize milk. And to do that, we start looking at bypass protein sources. And one of the best are soy-based, and an example of that is Amine Max. It's a high quality soy protein where about 80% of it or more actually escapes the rumen. And one of the beautiful things about a bypass soy is it's high in lysine. And lysine and methionine are typically the two first limiting amino acids for cows. So if we want to maximize performance, reduce environmental impact, as well as typically have cheaper diets and healthier cows, we want to do this mix. And we want to supply adequate amounts of lysine, methionine, energy. So the lysine's pretty easy. The methionine, which is really going to drive milk volume, milk protein, milk fat, and there's some new work that shows huge improvements in reproductive efficiency as well as overall immune function. To do that, because of the rumen, we can't just use a standard plain methionine. We have to use a bypass. And it's either a chemical compound that escapes the rumen or it's coated. And if we look at a couple of examples of that, we have Metasmart, where it's about 50% is degraded in the rumen, which is good for rumen health, and 50% escapes the rumen. Another product is Smartamine, which gives us about 80% bypass methionine, and that's actually a true coating. So those are all pretty easy. The new ones that we're looking at are related to energy. And if we want to get more energy to the cows, we get challenged because if we feed too much starch, we run into acidosis. So that's when we start looking at bypass fats. And to do that, we actually start looking at the fatty acid profile, just like we do with amino acids, but now we're talking fatty acids. And there's some really good ratios that'll, again, maximize milk fat and have some health and reproductive uh, benefits. So that's where products like Megalac or some of the other palm-based fat products come in. And we want to make sure that we have enough palmitic acid or else we'll reduce milk fat. To do all of these, it's depends upon the environment, it depends on the cow, but it also depends on how we formulate and implement diets. And that's where AMTS comes in. Our software actually is a model that models the rumen and tells us, based on the diet, based on the nutrient analysis, how much microbes we're gonna grow, as well as how much bypass protein, bypass lysine that we're actually gonna get from the diet. But to do that accurately, we also need to have really good feed analysis. And to get that feed analysis, we really need to be working with good labs. And an example of such a lab is HEPSA lab. So a good lab like HEPSA lab can be very powerful. Again, we want to look at the whole package to make bypass technologies work for what's best for the cow, the best for the farm, and the best for the environment. So if you have any questions, please contact me. You can find me on WhatsApp, Facebook, whatever. Reach out to me. With that, folks, have a wonderful day, and thank you very much.